Hey, everybody. Welcome back to this episode of Think Business Live. Looking forward to sitting down and talking with Rob Rogers and Gary Millet, co-founders of Real Ketones. We're talking everything keto today, and as well as everything entrepreneurial and you guys starting your business. And, I think there's a lot to dive into. So I think for starters, well, first of all, thanks for being on the show, guys.
Thanks for having us, Jon.
Thanks so much, Jon.
And, I think, keto, let's talk keto for people who don't know keto, because I actually tried doing keto for a while and it was challenging for me. And I don't necessarily know if I ever fully knew what keto was. So, let's talk about keto, macros, keto, keto 101. Let's start out with that.
Hey, let me just start, but, Gary is probably the most knowledgeable person in this space. So I think you're going to learn a lot today. And I think the other brilliant thing about Gary is he keeps it incredibly simple. So for your audience that maybe doesn't know all the specifics with keto, great, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So like you, Jon, it was really hard for me to do keto. And I do a little bit of keto. Gary has been in keto probably, the last 5 or 6 years. So he's very stringent and he follows it. But like me, it's really hard for me to follow the macros.
Yeah.
And that was what was brilliant about the products we developed. And we'll get into that later. It makes keto so easy and can get a lot of people into keto that otherwise wouldn't. So Gary, I'll let you elaborate on that.
So, hey, Jon, what's really interesting about keto is it's really misunderstood. And I think that you kind of started that whole process out with those words.
Yeah.
Let's make it really simple. When your body is being fueled with glucose and you have plenty of glucose in your body, then your ketone system is not operational. So what has to happen in order for your body to produce ketones? So when you're talking keto, what you really are meaning is that your body is using something called ketones for fuel. Okay. So if you think about carbohydrates, they break down into something called glucose, right? Glucose is what powers the body. It gives it the energy. Well, when you break down fat breaks down into ketones, and ketones is what powers the body. So think about two fuel systems, right? One is a glucose fuel system. The other is a ketone fuel system.
Got it.
So when you actually go from burning carbohydrates and protein for fuel to burning fat for fuel, you're going from glucose-based energy system to a ketone-based energy system, okay? Now, why would you do that? Well, let me give you kind of an analogy, and I give this analogy all the time, is that if you're burning glucose versus ketones have 2.5 times, by the way, the energy of glucose. So it's like pulling up to the gas pump and saying, hey, can I get that fuel that's 2.5 times less powerful, please? Right?
Yeah.
You go over to the other pump and it's a fuel that's 2.5 times more powerful. But here's something that's very interesting. Have you ever heard of a free radical?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's what destroys cells.
Yeah.
When you're powering your body, Jon, using glucose, you're producing 45 times more free radicals than when you're powering your body with ketones.
Got it.
So then here's the next one. The body's preferred fuel is a ketone. It's not glucose.
I didn't realize that. That's interesting.
So I think that a lot of people don't realize how incredible ketones are. And of course, you probably heard the reports. Ketones are anti-inflammatory, right? You've probably heard that as a benefit. You've probably heard that ketones certainly help in aspects of mental clarity, of mood change, of those types of central nervous systems disorders. The heart prefers ketones over glucose. These are all the benefits of ketones. So the question is, why don't we always just use ketones instead of glucose? Why don't you use the best fuel possible? Well, back to your original comment, it's hard because you have to deprive your body of carbohydrates. And of course, that sort of goes against the central aisle of the grocery store now, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, and it takes more thinking. That's why I was really interested to talk to you guys. I mean, so I tracked my macros for a while, and every once in a while I'll track them on MyFitnessPal. And I have, all this like fat and protein left in the day. So I find myself eating like, 20 olives and, 2 chicken breasts. So, yeah. So, how does somebody actually, really, how do you make it easy for yourself?
Well, that's what we did. And so our journey, John, started about, God, Gary, what was it, about 7 years ago when no one even knew what keto was, John.
Yeah.
And anything tied to, if anything that had the word keto in it was negative. So think ketoacidosis for a type 1 diabetic. So when Gary and I started this journey, everybody said we're crazy. And the whole premise of starting the journey was to create a ketone that literally could go in your body. So when you see today, you see elite athletes, probably a lot of people in your community that's watching these podcasts, entrepreneurs, everybody that's looking to get one up on the competition. But when you look at these elite athletes and what they had to do, one of the first ones in it was LeBron James. And man, again, to follow a ketogenic diet and do everything is incredibly difficult, but look at the benefits. Most elite athletes today do keto. So how cool would it be if you could just take a supplement, maybe a powder poured in water, and you could literally get ketones in your body? That's what we did. That's what Gary developed. So really, to keep it real simple, we tell people take one of the supplements in the morning, one in the afternoon, and you eat a sensible dinner, and that's it. That's all you got to do. 1, 2, 3 process. Very simple.
So, what's interesting, John, if we put it in really, really simple terms, the thing you want in keto is ketones. You don't want anything else except ketones. And so Rob is exactly right. What if you can just get ketones? Because if ketones, by the way, are the body's preferred fuel, guess what? As soon as you take ketones, the body uses them.
Yeah.
It's so amazing how that happens. There's no storage system for ketones, John. They're just used.
Yeah. So how do you guys, so let's talk this about from a business perspective, and how do you guys consistently message this as you grow your business, right? Because many, many years ago, I read a book called Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore. I don't know if you guys read it. If not,
love that book.
Yeah. You love it. It's a great book, I think, and it's so relevant for today. Is it? I mean,
that's one of the best books ever written.
It's one of the best books ever written, and I keep on telling myself to reread it because when COVID hit, it kind of reset the chart, right? Yeah. And so you had kind of the pioneers, who, the laggards, right? The whole Crossing the Chasm Jeffrey Moore chart. And so I would imagine that it's you got the pioneers who kind of get it and can jump on board. But then you have the people who just need to hear how to do it over and over and over again for it to catch on. So as a company, how have you guys grown your brand and consistently messaged out your brand to grow your business?
Well, there's 2 chasms here. That's what's kind of interesting about this conversation with you, John.
Yeah.
The 2 chasms are, I think keto as the word has really caught on. I think it's the hottest word out there, right, Rob?
It is. This is a 3rd year in a row where it's the #1 search term on Google.
Does this mean we're in? Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you got keto, right? And John, you've tried the keto diet. Very, very difficult. You have to pay attention all the time. The goal of a keto diet is ketones, right? So that's kind of chasm #1, which I think has been bridged. I think we're from the innovators, now we're into mainstream with keto, because keto is kind of everywhere. The second chasm is when people finally understand what you're trying to accomplish is get ketones.
Yeah.
And I think once that chasm is crossed, it's going to make all the difference in the world as to the fact that people have to understand keto really is ketones.
Uh-huh.
I think once we get that message across, I think what we're trying to accomplish with helping the health of the world, that becomes a reality.
Yeah. Yeah. And how have you guys done that with your business? I've been to your website, the products that you have. How do you guys market yourself consistently, not only as educating people on ketos, but just as a new-ish company in the marketplace?
Well, therein lies the journey, John. And I think, to Gary's point, the second chasm is where we're at, and that's tough. So, as we said before, everybody pretty much is sort of a keto diet, but what they don't understand, which is unique, is your body starts producing, as Gary has said, a ketone. They don't get that. They just think they do the keto diet and they lose weight. So the challenge we had was 7 years ago, everything was negative about ketones, and it was very difficult to explain. It would take 20, 30 minutes to explain what Gary has done very elegantly in a couple minutes. So we said, all right, let's do this. Let's partner with a multi-level marketing company and let's get the word out there. Let's let them make the market. So we partnered with a multi-level marketing company called Prove It. They started in the United States, and now they're in about 10 or 15 different companies. But John, they did an incredible job as they got the word out there, and they did it quickly, and it exploded. Very expensive, but the way they did it was brilliant. So they did a really good job and got it out there. Then we said,
what did they do? What were some of the things they did?
No, they did a very good job education. They held seminars, but they did a very good job, like Gary's been doing, keeping the difficult very simple. Unlike other multi-level marketing companies out there, they did make all these great big claims. They kept it simple. They said it's not easy. Even though you're going to be taking a supplement, you still have to cut back on your carbs. You got to still cut back on the number one enemy, which is sugar. And they were very honest with people. And they didn't go out and make big claims. And to their credit, it really paid off. People really followed it, and they knew it was challenging. But after 3-4 weeks, they started seeing results, and the results have been incredible. But I
just want to stop you for one second. But the investment was not only the investment that you guys made, but the investment of consistent education, right? So just keep on educating. I mean, I'm a big believer, and as I'm coaching companies, I always tell them, people need to hear things and see things 17 to 50 times before they even start to get to their point where they can start to understand it. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's ketos or whether the topic doesn't matter. The science, and the formula behind it is always typically the same.
100%. The messaging, what they did a good job of, and then we followed up with our brand, Real Ketones. One, absolutely education, but over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
John, one of the things that I want to say that I think is kind of important here is that there are so many supplements. When Rob and I, we've never been in the nutraceutical business before. This is our first venture in that business. So we had a lot to learn. So our learning curve was really, really steep.
Yeah.
And what we kind of discovered through that whole process is about 95% of the stuff out there actually doesn't work. So people are looking for solutions, and there's a lot of things out there on the market, but so many of them really don't effectively accomplish what the claim is that they're trying to accomplish. The one thing that's very interesting about ketones is they work. It's an energy molecule that your body produces, and the fact that you can take it and the body immediately absorbs it at 98%. Think about that. Your body will absorb 98% of what you take. it actually works, and more importantly, people can feel it work.
But what do you say to people who, when you say that, because we're not, it's, we weren't raised, many people weren't raised on that, what you're talking about. So somebody who's listening and saying, you know what, that almost sounds scientific. It makes me nervous to even hear that. Is this like, how do you kind of bridge the gap of just the fear of what it could do to your body versus the benefits that you're talking about?
So since the body actually makes ketones, there should be zero fear. Right? I mean, think about it. Your body, when you deprive it of carbohydrates, it automatically makes ketones. So talk about safety. So here's a product that your body makes, and it makes it continuously. So there's no safety issues whatsoever. So there should be absolutely no fear in taking exogenous ketones. Okay. And then earlier, we kind of went through what those benefits were, but the benefit people feel first is what it does to your brain. It makes you more alert. It gives you mental clarity. It gives you that sharpness. You don't get that bonk in the afternoon. You feel a different level of energy than you feel by taking glucose.
Yeah.
That's really where it's at.
That's where it's at. Got it.
Hey, John, let me add to that. The other thing that Gary and I did, being new to this space, and everybody said we were crazy, was we did studies. We said, we're going to validate the products that we come out with. And we were very surprised. Both Gary and I are former athletes. I'm a former pro baseball player. Gary is an incredible tennis player and was a basketball player. So we've taken the vast majority of supplements out there, and we were able to see, as Gary said, a vast majority didn't do anything. So when Gary and I came out, and to do these double-blind placebo studies are incredibly expensive. They're millions of dollars to do. And that's why the majority of people don't do them. But we said, if we're going to do this and we're really going to create products that work, then we have to validate them. And to your point, to give people peace of mind that the products actually, one, are safe, and two, they do what we say they're going to do. So we have done these double-blind placebo studies, and the study results were incredible.
Wow, that's great. So now, thanks for that, fellas. So now let's talk about building the business. What are some of the challenges you guys have, now that we're in COVID, building your business? Right? What are some of the challenges or, benefits of working remotely today?
Well, I think remotely, we've actually always been, John, a virtual company. So for us, working virtually hasn't been much of a change in the way we do business. Rob and I do enjoy face-to-face meetings with people because you can get a lot done. But for the most part, outside, I think of that, there's not been a lot of change to the infrastructure and the working of our company internally. And we do a lot of manufacturing remotely anyway. So for us, it hasn't been a lot of change that way.
Yeah, John, and we set it up that way purposely. Gary and I we're serial entrepreneurs. So we've had companies with hundreds of employees. And when we started Real Ketones, we said, we're not going to do that again.
Yeah.
We're going to take advantage of our core strength. As I said earlier before the call, we all have a lot in common here. And Gary and I, we had, as we've said, we had no history in this supplement space, but we had a passion about it, incredible passion about making something that literally worked and to impact obesity. We're seeing incredible numbers of obesity everywhere in the world. But Gary and I purposely, even though we have offices, we have 6 offices throughout the United States, everything was set up virtually. And then we've done a ton of joint ventures with incredible people and said, you know what, they specialize in manufacturing, they specialize in fulfillment, et cetera. And we partnered with them. And so Gary and I didn't have to worry about that again. And I'm telling you, it's been incredible.
Yeah. What do you guys think? That sounds great. And I love that you guys, had the foresight to really create a company that is virtual. I've been virtual for over 5 years that I have my company. I mean, I have a lot of local clients. I go to their offices, but I coach companies all over the country, and it's been over Zoom and calls. The studies have shown that by the year 2030, 85% of the jobs that exist pre-COVID do not exist today. And, I think COVID accelerated that. And so from your guys' perspective, working virtually comes naturally to you. That's how you set up your company. Same with me. What is the next decade in your guys? We're just kind of crystal balling it, but what does the next decade look like now that COVID has come and working remotely, people are finding is not only effective, but profitable, and people can have a little bit more balance in their life. And, what do you guys think as serial entrepreneurs and having managed hundreds of people? How is COVID going to affect, the business world moving forward?
That's such a big question, Jon.
We only ask big questions.
I applaud your foresight in asking that question, because Rob and I actually talk about that question a lot.
Yeah.
First of all, I think from a business perspective, capital structures will change. Okay. And the reason I think that will change is that, to your point, at 85% virtual, you don't need nearly the infrastructure, brick and mortar investment in those types of things in order to generate the same amount of revenue. So I think from a fixed cost standpoint, you're going to see a big change in business platforms that way. Okay, we have a very, very lean fixed overhead platform. As Rob mentioned, we didn't want to get into that high overhead platform, because if anything goes wrong, what do?
Yeah.
You go out of business is what you do. Okay. So long term, we are going to continue to perfect our relationships with people who really do a super good job of what they do, and plug them into that virtual machine that we build, and take advantage of the efficiencies that you're describing.
Yeah.
I think that's what's going to happen, is that post-COVID, you're going to see business become more efficient.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Gary. I think it's going to be more efficient. I think people are going to look at the landscape of their office and say, how much space do I really need? Even with social distancing, a VP of sales no longer needs to be in the geography of where it is. So it takes that, I think we're going to see companies. I actually think that we're going to see an uptick in recruiting companies, because I think people are realizing we don't need okay, we don't need good, we don't need really, really good. We need great. And they're going to start looking to recruiters to search for great, versus having somebody, just kind of, do their best to, get somebody who almost fits what they're looking for, because they don't have the people power to do the recruiting. But because of that, they need to be more efficient with, time and everything. Rob, how about you?
No, I agree 100%. And I think I want to come back to that, but to go back to what Gary said earlier, I think there's pluses and minuses. So we have an office in, for example, San Diego, where we have employees. And typically, as people know in California, when you get on the highway, you could drive an hour to get to our office. On a bad day, it might take you 2 hours.
Yeah.
And then you got 2 hours to go home. Think of the quality of life improvement that these folks have now working at home.
Yeah.
And with that, though, there comes a lot of trust from Gary and I. And employers are going to have that trust, because they're not in the office anymore where you can see them. But to that point, there's a lot of benefits of being in the office. I can't tell you, when Gary and I get together with some employees, how much more ideas come out of it as opposed to Zoom or talking on the phone. When you're with people all the time, Gary and I are coming up with ideas all the time. I have noticed that drop off since COVID's hit, and we're not in the office as much. We've lost that. And I miss that. And I was just in, I've been traveling a little bit again, which has been interesting. But when I was in Dallas, it was really good to get to get in a meeting and get face to face with some people and get some ideas going again.
Yeah.
So I since COVID's happened, I literally miss that.
Yeah. I think I agree with you. There's nothing like people in a room and the energy of that to foster great ideas and great conversations. And sometimes it's those impromptu meetings that really, but one of the things I'm seeing is, people, typically I go into businesses and they don't even have a business plan. And so then they'll create a company business plan, but everybody underneath the company business plan doesn't have a business plan. The managers, the operations, the sales, and it's getting everybody on a business plan to hold them accountable and then drive the accountability. And then unfortunately or fortunately, it requires leaders to try to recreate on a regular basis that energy via Zoom, which is not always easy. It's not always easy. All right, so before we close it, I want to move into a speed round. Talk a little bit about, in simple forms, how to calculate your macros, right? So you guys are keto guys, and it's all about the macros. Like, how do I, if I'm listening to this now or later, how do I calculate my macros to make it work for me?
So if you want to get into keto, John, it's pretty simple. The first thing you have to do is, and you're a relatively thin human being, so it's going to be easier for you than it is for others, right? To get into keto, actually. So the first thing you would do is that you would have to consume probably less than 30 grams of carbs a day. That's kind of where you start.
Yeah.
Okay? Then depending on how much body composition you want to change, do you want to lose weight? Do you want to maintain weight? Do you just want ketones? What do you want? What would be your goal, John?
Me?
Yeah.
Right now,
an example.
I weigh 197. I'd like to weigh 185.
185, perfect. Okay, so
183.
you want to drop about 12 pounds, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what you would do: is you would go into a 30-gram carbohydrate restrictive diet. Now, this is without our product. This is just plain keto macros.
Yeah.
Okay. Then at that point, you would have about the same amount of protein, 30 to 40 grams of that. Okay. And then you would probably have right around 70 grams of fat. That will give you a calorie deficit of probably 1,000 calories in a matter of 8 weeks. You'll have lost your 12 pounds.
Okay.
So it's a fairly simple formula that starts with restricting carbs, restricting protein, because remember, John, if you eat too much protein, it converts to glucose.
Got it.
Okay, so you have to restrict protein, you have to restrict carbohydrates, and then you have to increase your fat in order to maintain your energy level. That's traditional.
All right. And then your products, tell everybody a little bit about your products and who your ideal clients are and what the products do.
Yeah, well, right now our ideal customer is a male or female. It's anywhere from 25 all the way up to say 55. Almost similar to you, John, somebody looking to drop anywhere from say 5 to 15 pounds, looking to do it very quickly. Product wise, we've done an incredible job of coming out with a suite of products. So as I mentioned earlier, we have powders. You just drop them in water and drink them. They taste like orange juice, lemonade, chocolate milk. We've come out with food. So think bars or chips that you can actually eat that are healthy for you.
Yeah.
And we started to come out with drinks. So we've created a shot, and we're going to have some ready to drink energy drinks. So we have a big suite. So whatever mechanism you're looking to do, you can literally do.
Nice.
So for you, let's go back to what it would be using exogenous ketone protocol. Okay. It's really pretty simple. You would have a ketone drink in the morning. Okay. Whenever you get up, whatever you want to do on that, John. In the afternoon, you would have another one. And then you would have a restricted carb meal at night, no alcohol. And at that point in time, literally within 8 weeks, you'd accomplish your goal.
Yeah. Okay. All right, guys.
How much simpler is that?
Sounds pretty simple. All right, you guys, I appreciate the breakdown. You guys ready for the speed round?
Let's do it.
All right. Each of you, favorite book and why?
Go ahead, Rob. My favorite what?
Your favorite book and why?
Oh, the Chasm book, Crossing the Chasm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That book has stayed relevant, John.
Yeah.
For such a long time, and I would recommend anybody that hasn't read that book to read it over and over again.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a great book.
I keep it simple. Same book. Great book.
Yeah, such a good book. Yeah. All right, guys, my last question. A lot of kids graduated college. You guys are serial entrepreneurs. A lot of people have recently graduated college in a world that looks a lot different than they thought it would be a couple months ago. What advice would you give somebody graduating college today?
I just had a daughter that just graduated, and I would tell them what I told her: be persistent, don't give up. So if you're going to send out 10 resumes, send out 100. But go after your dreams. Don't deviate from that. Go after 100% of what you believe in.
Gary, how about you?
It's kind of what I told my son Alex at the very beginning: is study something that really builds a technical skill.
Yeah.
Because from any technical skill that you build, you can actually build any other skill, and you can always have a great job.
Yeah.
So I think college sometimes is a great experience, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of people who graduate with degrees that don't mean much, and they don't have much value in the workplace. So I think building a technical skill is something that can help you, gives you confidence to do almost anything else. And then at that point, your career can blossom in any direction.
Yeah, I love it. All right, fellas, I appreciate your wisdom. Tell everybody how they can get a hold of you.
They can just go to realketones.com, RealKetones, and they'll find everything about the company.
All right, good. Well, fellas, I appreciate you guys taking time to talk to me and the Think community. Thanks for educating us on, being an entrepreneur, growing a business, keto, and all that other great stuff. I may be reaching out as I, dive in a little bit. So,
Thanks, John.
I appreciate it a lot, guys. Thank you very, very much. And all the best to you and your summer and the growth of your company.
Thank you, John. Same to you.
Thanks, guys.